We have a common theme in our scriptures today, and that's selfishness or egotism. We hear in the gospel, Jesus is making sure that the Pharisee understands when you hold banquets, which they did often, sometimes they would make sure that they invite certain people because the expectation was you'd get an invitation back. So the idea was, I'm going to feed you, but you better invite me to your banquet. So it was doing something with a motive to receive back. It was giving in order to get. And that's what we call commerce. Right? So giving in order to get means that we're trying to do business with people. It's actually like capitalism, if you would. Giving in order to get. In the first reading, though, we hear this: do nothing out of selfishness or vainglory. Rather, humbly regard others as more important than yourselves, each looking out not for his own interests. And sometimes we can stop right there and we can think, I'm not supposed to look out for my own interest. But we got to read the rest of the line. It says, but also everyone for those of others. In other words, it's a matter of making sure that we're not egotistical and narcissistic, but at the same time, we don't hear anybody saying, don't look out for your interests. When Jesus was preaching on the Sermon on the Mount, he said that we are not to be worried and anxious about what we are to eat and what we are to drink, that God knows that, and he will provide it, which means that he's not saying your interests are going to be completely and totally ignored. Rather, he's saying not to be afraid when we see this, not to be afraid to be willing to give, knowing that there will be some kind of a reception, God will repay in one way or another, and that there is enough. It's interesting, when we look at Jesus in the Gospels, we can see what kind of attitude he takes. There was a woman who came in, if you remember the story, with an alabaster jar filled with aromatic nard that was worth 300 days' wages, or 300 denarii. So imagine that, say your average worker gets about $30,000 a year. This oil basically costs about $25,000. Okay? And she breaks open this jar and pours it on Jesus' feet. Jesus doesn't stop and say, no, you're wasting that. He receives it. He says, she has done me a kindness. She's prepared my body for burial. Everybody else was trying to say, especially those who wanted to rob from the collection. Judas, right? Judas, who says, why this waste? It should have been sold and the money given to the poor. And the gospel tells us quite clearly, he didn't have any concern for the poor. He was actually looking out for himself and his own ability to be able to get more. $25,000, yeah. So, we have to make sure that we understand what goes on. At the Last Supper, Jesus comes up to Peter, and Peter tries to say to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? You'll never wash my feet. And Jesus says, unless I wash your feet, you have no share in me. So Jesus literally has to convince Peter that he's supposed to receive. Is that selfish for Peter to receive? No. We have two extremes sometimes, brothers and sisters. We have people who are so egotistical that they have to be convinced to be concerned about other people, right? But on the other side, sometimes we got people who misread the gospel to think that they're always supposed to never be concerned about themselves. And so even sometimes what happens is they close themselves off to the blessings that God wants to give to them. They might think, no, it's selfish to pray for myself, or it's selfish to ask the Lord for healing. I've seen it. People who come up sometimes at healing masses where they're saying, I want prayer for so-and-so, for other people. And I say, okay, well, what does the Lord want to give to you? Oh, no, the other people. It's like, okay, I'll make you a deal. We'll pray for those other people, but first you receive. And when they do, they get blessed. When they open up and they realize Jesus wants to give them more than they realize. The reading for us today, the scriptures are telling us quite clearly that we are to be concerned about others as well. You know, you're in an airplane and they say you put on your own oxygen mask and then you assist the other people, right? Is it selfish to put on your own oxygen mask first? No. Why? Because you don't have enough oxygen to start with the other person and then put your own on. You might pass out. So first you put yours on and then you help the other people. That's why we're here first. We're here to receive from Jesus in the Eucharist today first. Jesus is going to fill us, and he just asks us then to also be concerned about other people as well. That's why we bring our petitions here today, our intentions to pray for people that we care about. And then we also ask the Lord to give us that grace that we need, that everybody we encounter might encounter him through us. And believe me when we say, if we're honest, we admit that we're all practicing that, but it's what we want. We want people to be blessed through us. So we ask the Lord today for that healthy and balanced sense of generosity towards others, being concerned about them, but also being willing to receive all the blessings that God wants to give to each and every single one of us.